Alright, hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name is Curtis, and today we're going to be talking about the most masculine leaning fragrances that I have in my collection. Now for me personally, I don't really see gender in fragrances. However, I see all fragrances as unisex, but they tend to either push masculine or feminine. So I've gone through my collection and I've chosen the fragrances that push the most masculine for myself personally in terms of, how I perceive these fragrances. Your opinions might vary about them, but the way that I perceive these fragrances, I believe them all to be unisex, but they push masculine. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts and opinions on these fragrances, let's go. First up, from the house of Perris, Monte Carlo, we have Oud Imperial. Man, so this one is oud with character. It's dark, woody, earthy, and slightly medicinal. And you have a bit of smoke in here too, which is adding to the depth and character of this fragrance. But man, this is such a good one. Now, I'll say this, I have to be in the right mood to kind of wear this fragrance. This is more of a fall and winter scent for me, as it does push out quite heavily. And I think just the vibe overall, it's kind of more of like an evening type of fall winter scent for me personally. But man, this is a gorgeous wear if you like this style of fragrance. I mentioned about this being smoky. When you do push further into that dry down, that smoke does start to become a bit more prominent, and it does start to become slightly leathery as well. And this is just one of those fragrances, you put this on and it's like, I'm not playing around. Like, I'm here, I'm coming. It's one of these types of fragrances. So, you definitely have to, have the confidence to wear a fragrance like this, but if you do, this is a gorgeous wear, and this is like one of those statement maker. This is definitely a statement making fragrance. Man, it's a gorgeous one. And I think the house of Perris Monte Carlo in general is an underrated house. They produce just phenomenal fragrances. So yeah, I have a few from their house, and man, they're all just phenomenal. Oud Imperial was perfumed by Luca Maffei. He's also perfumed my favorite rose fragrance. If you guys have been following this channel for any amount of time, my favorite rose fragrance is Rose de Taif Extrait from the same house, Perris Monte Carlo. He perfumed that one as well. But man, he's just done a phenomenal job here. Man, so if you're looking for a masculine leaning fragrance that, has a bit of oud, leather, and it is extremely woody and slightly smoky, then, look to a fragrance like this. Like I said before, this is a statement maker and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Oud Imperial by Perris Monte Carlo. Next up, from the house of Jovoy, we have Incident Diplomatique. Man, so this is definitely one of my favorites from the house. This is basically vetiver and patchouli going head to head, and eventually in the end, the vetiver kind of pulls ahead of the patchouli, for me anyways, in terms of being the dominant note. And for me, vetiver kind of registers as a masculine note for me personally. But of course, women can pull vetiver off as well. But for me, vetiver just kind of registers as a masculine note. And yeah, the vetiver in here is just so gorgeously done, and combined with that patchouli. And also there's a very, I don't know what it is exactly, but it's some kind of citrusy note in here that is prominent on my skin through the life of this fragrance, which is quite impressive considering that citrusy kind of notes tend to fade rather quickly. However, this one lasts through the life of the fragrance. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. It's kind of bringing this kind of underlying freshness to this fragrance, but man, it is such a beautiful one. Also in the dry down of this, the vetiver tends to go slightly ashy, and it took me a little bit of time to get my nose accustomed to that kind of ashy type of smell, but actually now I really, really enjoy it, and I look forward to the dry down. It just adds another kind of dimension to this fragrance. This fragrance is quite complex, but it is a gorgeous wear. And I tend to wear this one to the office a lot, or if I'm going out for like a special occasion, if I'm dressed up in a suit. This is just a very classy, elegant and opulent smelling fragrance in my opinion, and it's just the epitome of masculinity. But this is a great one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Incident Diplomatique by Jovoy. Next up, from the house of Jeroboam, we have Vespero. Man, so this is such a beautiful fragrance, and it's the perfect combination between light and dark. Basically, upon initial spray, you get some bright, crispy apples, and then you get some kind of leather that starts to push forward with a bit of smokiness. But man, just that contrast between that light and dark is just so well done here. And this fragrance kind of pushes along the lines of like a Creed, Aventus type of DNA, but it's not a clone or dupe by any means. But it might remind you of a fragrance like that. But man, this is such a gorgeous wear. And one thing that I love about the House of Jeroboam is that, they produce 30 ml straight to parfum concentrations. It's such an easy bottle to kind of take with you if you have to go out, if you ever need to reapply, which these are all like straight to parfums. Phenomenal performance with these fragrances. So, I mean, it's rare that I even have to take this type of bottle with me when I go out because it lasts the entire day for me. But if you ever thought that you would need to, I mean, 30 ml size is a good size to, easily just kind of throw in your bag and go with. But man, these are just lovely perfumes. And I feel like the House of Jeroboam is one of those houses that's completely underrated. I mean, they are the sister company of Jovoy, so they kind of sit in the shadows of Jovoy. But man, this is such a lovely one. I think 6 other fragrances from the House of Jeroboam, and they're all phenomenal. Not only in terms of their smell, but in their performance as well. But this is a beauty and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Vespero by Jeroboam. Next up from the House of Nishane, we have Kredo. Man, so this one is just very robust, sweet, deep, rich, thick, and slightly creamy. This fragrance kind of pushes along the lines of a Tom Ford Oud Wood, but it's kind of Nishane's take on that style of DNA, I guess. It's definitely not a dupe or a clone. I guess you could argue that this could be like an inspired by type of fragrance, but it's definitely Nishane's own take. So it's definitely unique in that regard. But man, this is such a gorgeous, gorgeous wear. Now you do have to be a fan of those woody style of fragrances, but this doesn't give you like, it's a very easy wear in my opinion. Like there's no kind of funkiness to this fragrance, but it does push very masculine in my opinion. So, you have to kind of like that style of fragrance. Man, but this one's just a very well blended, subtle oud and suede combination here that is just, like I said, just blended to perfection in my opinion. But yeah, this is a great one. I feel like Kredo is one of the fragrances from Nishane that's quite underrated. You don't hear a lot of people talking about this one, but man, it's definitely one of my favorites from the house. And this is another one of those fragrances though where I kind of have to be in the mood for it. It's one that I would reach for in the colder months, definitely fall and winter. I typically don't reach for this type of fragrance in the spring. Not to say that you can't wear it. I mean, wear fragrances, whenever you want. Season shouldn't matter. But for me personally, in terms of, what style of fragrances I like to wear, this is a fragrance for the fall and winter for me personally. But this is a lovely one and definitely one to check out. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Kredo by Nishane. And finally, from the House of Amouage, we have Beach Hut. Man, what can I say about this fragrance? This is kind of a minty, green, earthy fragrance that kind of pushes along the lines of a fougere, but I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a fougere. This does push extremely masculine, but I guess my image of this fragrance is that if you're in the forest and you are walking through the deep forest, you're stepping on just dry leaves, the aromas from the dry leaves and the branches and trees that you're rubbing up against, the atmosphere that you're in, it's just all wafting up into your nose. And then you come to this kind of wooden hut that's in the middle of the forest. You go into the hut, the sun's beating down, and so that heat is kind of pushing off the aromas from that kind of burnt scorched wood on the top of the hut, and that's basically what you get here. You might be confused by the name Beach Hut, man. It doesn't, it definitely, I think some people see this Beach Hut, man, and they might think aquatic fragrance. It is not aquatic. It couldn't be further from that. So the name might be misleading, but this fragrance, like I said, it has some mint in it. It has some ivy, which is very interesting. I don't have another fragrance that contains the note of ivy. So that's what makes this fragrance very unique to my own collection. And in terms of, other fragrances that I have that smell like this, zero. This one has such a unique smell. It's very masculine, fresh, woody, and man, this is definitely one of my favorites from the house of Amouage. If you haven't got your nose on this, you definitely should. So if you can, get yourself a sample of Beach Hut Man by Amouage. All right, guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content, and let me know down in the comment section, what are some fragrances that you have in your collection that push masculine? I'd love to hear about them. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.